And I'd just like to briefly read over our protocol for public comment. In order to maintain a respectful public forum, members of the audience will please limit applause to occasions of student performance, employee recognition, and significant community contributions, which are celebrated by everyone present. So what we've done is if you hear something that you agree with tonight, you can shake your hands, but if we have applause for every speaker, it just prolongs the meeting. So we would ask you to just use your jazz hands. During this public comment period, the law does not allow the Board of Education to take action on any item not explicitly posted on the agenda in advance. However, board members may ask for clarification, refer concerns to staff, and or request that an item be placed on a future agenda. Now, of course, this item is on the agenda, but traditionally, for those of you who have not been here, you make your public comment, and as a board, we don't respond unless something needs to be clarified by staff. So bear with me one moment. I'm going to count these cards because we did say we were going to, the number of cards was going to affect how much time we give each person. So just one moment, please. Okay, I see one more coming down. You'll be happy to know we're still within the 3-minute limit. But 25 folks times 3 minutes. Let's share the evening together. Okay, so I'm going to call a few names at once. If you could line up, we're trying to do this as orderly as possible. I just like to emphasize that we have respect for every speaker in this room. Please do not interrupt a speaker or clap for them or boo at them. Please have respect for your fellow community members. Thank you. So these are in the order that I received them. So Karen Hamilton, Laura Anderson, Nicholas Turney, and Blair Howard. Yeah, I will. No.
Hi, good evening.
Sorry, go ahead, Karen. Thanks.
Okay. Hello. I'm a DJUSD parent. I have been for a very long time, like 20 years. I'm very grateful to hear the presentation of the superintendent, which I found to be very eloquent and pedagogically sound from everything I've ever read or heard. Just to bring things to a more basic level for more basic people like me, I would say that there are a lot of smart kids in this district with enormous academic and intellectual potential, and the vast majority of them are not in the self-contained program. The district needs to keep moving into a growth mindset through differentiation within the Common Core across the curriculum. Differentiation benefits all kids. The superintendent's presentation shows on the educational background data that the self-contained program is basically now functioning as an elitist perk for our students who come from the most privileged educational backgrounds. And giving in to parental demands concerning their preferences and desires for single-grade, self-contained classrooms will never help us move toward closing the achievement gap, and it cannot be a DJUSD priority. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention something else. You can come on down, Laura. For those of you who haven't been here before, this little timer is in the green. You're doing fine. It's in the yellow, start to wrap up. And when it's red, please wrap up your comments. So thank you. Hi, Laura.
Hi. My name is Laura Anderson, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Patwin Elementary School. Thank you, Superintendent, for that very clear summary of what's the research and data that we've been collecting. I, along with many other teachers, applaud the difficult but positive decisions that the board has made to support the much needed changes in our model of serving AIM-identified students. The goals that were brought forward in the strategic plan for quality professional development have largely been met. Teachers are collaborating with compensation and taking advantage of opportunities for learning in content areas, as well as strategies for differentiated instruction, project-based learning, and a growth mindset approach. Many of these well-researched strategies show support for heterogeneous groupings of students. This past weekend, along with many other Davis teachers and many paraeducators, I attended the fourth of 5 sessions at UC Davis Math Project. And along with new ideas to actively engage all students, we looked at research regarding factors affecting student academic growth. The research showed positive effects regarding I'm a reader, so. Regarding factors affecting student academic growth. Research showed positive effects were achieved by factors including increased classroom discussion, such as number talks, self-reporting student goals and expectations. One glaring negative effect was on yearly growth was the labeling and separation of students, either in special ed or gifted categories. With teachers attending these professional development opportunities, bringing forward this research from reputable universities, including our own UC Davis, and continuing to share it at sites with our peers, we can't continue to support labeling and separation in our district. I find many teachers from other districts surprised that we continue this approach. While our district claims to value inclusiveness, I agree that this model does not seem to be in accord with that core value. Students learn from each other and often from those most different from themselves. Some state concern about the lack of diversity in self-contained classrooms. To most teachers, the answer is simple. Davis is a diverse community. If we allow all students to be served in our exemplary classrooms, this diversity will be maintained. Teachers can collaborate using expertise gained from years of experience in a variety of classrooms. I urge you to continue to move forward towards an equitable and less divisive means of serving the needs of AIM students. Davis teachers are now more than ever highly qualified and able to competently meet the needs of all students in our district. Thank you so much.
Kate Nicholas.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank the superintendent for his presentation tonight. And there was a big term that was used many times, and that is equity. Now, as an educator myself, I understand the need for student equity and that children who are placed into a combination class are not receiving the same equity as those who are in same grade classes. It was on Tuesday night that Troy, along with Mr. Duffy and some of the teachers at Pioneer, had a discussion with the parents of AIM-identified students, as well as students who are currently in self-contained AIM programs. The question that or the statement that was made that struck me was, who does the question go to? My question is not about what happens at our site. As a Pioneer parent, I have complete faith in our instructors as well as the staff and principal there. They do a fabulous job, and you see many happy, thriving children, whether they be in AIM, neighborhood program, or special education. I understand that there is a need for inclusion from the evidence of the data. However, this is a testing issue that I believe the district needs to examine and move forward with identifying a new way of identifying AIM students. However, my concern is not with this moving forward. My concern is with my student, my daughter, as well as her fellow classmates. They deserve to have equity and be able to have the same experience that the students who are currently in the AIM program at all of the school sites in the district are able to have. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Blair Howard. I even covered up my t-shirt to let everybody know I'm not representing the Davis Teachers Association when I'm speaking right now. Okay, I don't want it to Blair Howard. No, I'm just speaking as a professional of 12 years in education. I'm a huge majority. I agree with Superintendent Bose as presented tonight. I think it's the correct direction for the program based on, once again, thoughts on education and what I think will work best for students. I just want to insert sort of one of my pet issues into this conversation, and it reflects on this issue of combo classes that sometimes arise because of the programmatic decisions that have been made in this district, which is that, that we have this distinction that there's a grade and then there's another grade and they get put in the same class, and that's somehow a problem because these kids in this grade and these kids in this grade, and they shouldn't be in the same class. I don't think it's developmentally appropriate to think that kids who are a particular age and end up in a particular class somehow can't be in the same class together. Somehow their needs can't be met. I know it's difficult as a teacher who teaches kids 11th to 12th grade in the exact same class, making sure that they're all learning and they're in a similar place is hard, but that's kind of a part of the legacy that we have of an educational system that's developed over 100 years to say you're in 5th grade, this is what you're going to learn, you're in 6th grade, this is going to learn, and sort of those categories and boxes don't make sense for a 21st century learning environment. And so as we hopefully go forward and maybe think of creative ways to address these issues, that we think about the way in which standardization, not just of tests, but standardization of curriculum expectations and standards. And I know we're not going to get rid of state standards or nothing like that, but how we can be a little more creative with those classings and groupings, because the expectation, as I feel it from parents in the community, is that every parent expects their kid to be taught individually to meet their individual needs, no matter what kind of class they're in. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next speakers are Saye Homey, Chris Passerini, DeLay Beavers, and Flag Miller. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, this time I didn't prepare anything, so I'll just think of something and share with you. Thank you so much for letting us speak tonight. Some issues, I remember we had a pajama day last year here. We were here until 11:30, and we were all fighting because there were too many gifted kids or AIM qualified, or we can't put them now, not enough, let's shuffle them, let's shake everything, and we don't care about the kids and we don't care about the parents. The social part of it is all the kids get along well. You can ask the principals, you can ask the teachers. Is any child hurting because she's not AIM identified? Are the AIM kids bullying them? No, I've never seen it, and you can ask all the principals and teachers. So some parents make it up because our parents, sometimes we are a little crazy. Thank God I'm not a soccer mom, but I've seen some soccer moms. The kid doesn't make it to the team. They can set fire to the whole building. So I don't know where the votes came from, or our kids are hurting. We have to be equal. I'm all for equality, but the problem last year was, I think someone failed, like the testing was wrong, underprivileged kids. Okay, are we doing verbal or nonverbal? So it's not our fault. It's not our kids' fault that some group are not in. I think something or someone somewhere is failing our kids no matter what. Black, white, Asian, anything. My daughter was in first grade when they told me, you have to go test her because we think she gets bored. She was only 6 or 7. I took her to the private. I paid a lot of money. I took her to professional, and they told me, just get out of the school and go to a better school district. And boy, I thought moving to Davis would solve the problem, and everyone would appreciate the genius that my daughter was. So I did some science classes for the kids when they were in second grade. And they all kept asking me about RNA and periodic table. I'm a scientist, but sometimes I can't answer the questions. So my question is, are you failing our kids, or are you going to solve the problem? Many of the Davis School, many of the parents move here because of the education. I know they are mostly white or mostly Asian, but it's not our fault. Please solve the problem. Where are you failing the underprivileged kids? So do our kids have to get hurt and you just shake them every year with unknowns and ask us to vote? We don't have any numbers. We don't know the future. We don't know where they end up, but you still like us to choose what we want to do. I think it's not fair to hundreds of the AIM identified kids. Thank you so much.
Okay, Chris?
The DJUSD mission statement on there says it's to ignite a love of learning through the optimal conditions in school environment. By slowly dismantling the AIM program, you are failing at least 10% of your students every year. Most of the kids in the classroom settings, at least from my experience, has been if the AIM kids are the filler kids. They're the kids that can get their work done. They're told to go sit in the back, read a book until the next instruction time. What does that teach our children? That they deserve less than the other kids? And how does that fit with your mission statement? You've asked me for money via property tax increases, money for classroom supplies, money to offset the cost of field trips. With the budget presentation that you had today, I'm sure you're going to ask me for more. You've asked me to volunteer my time in the classroom as a driver or chaperone on field trips, filling books in the Book in the Bag program. These things benefit all the children, not just mine. Now it's time for DJUSD to repay me for my sacrifices by fulfilling your obligations for all the AIM identified children, not necessarily in the self-contained, but all AIM identified children. By being more transparent, you need to send accurate, timely communications, provide a stable learning environment, and seeing the program through for our children. We respectfully ask that the district supply a 5-year plan for the intended direction of the AIM program that will help all those that are currently in there through at least the middle school years. We parents can't abide by the current approach of hasty implementation without thoughtful consideration. I am willing to volunteer my time to sit on a committee and help you guys make that 5-year plan. I'm willing to do it. And so thank you for your time. And Mr. Bose, I want to address you for a second. I emailed you and didn't hear anything back. I would like to meet with you at a time to tell you how the neighborhood school abused my daughter for 3 straight years. Abused her, made her hate coming to school, made her hate not wanting to come. This is the first year she loves school now because she's challenged, the teachers care about her, and they're working with her. So can I please set up a meeting and talk to you about that? Thank you.
Okay, Delay.
My name is DeLee Beavers. I am a Davis High graduate. We now have our 4th generation of our family in the Davis school system. I happen to have taught in the district for over 30 years. I've been a substitute for about 16 years. I've been able to be a substitute in the regular classroom, in the AIM or GATE classrooms. It's been a very interesting education for myself. Sometimes you wouldn't be able to tell a neighborhood program from a GATE program. I think one of the things that I would like to see, I think we're working towards the achievement gap. There are many good things going on in the neighborhood schools. We have great teachers. They are providing as many programs for children to meet their needs. The one thing that I've noticed that's happening in some of the schools now, there isn't quite the animosity or somebody saying, well, I'm in GATE and I can't play with you, or you're not in GATE, so you are not as qualified to be my friend. But something very interesting happened this week in one of the classrooms in our neighborhood schools. Some of you on the board, I'm sure, were informed. Someone from out of the district came to make a presentation to a neighborhood classroom and made a statement in regards to they were such good listeners, and even though they were not a GATE or an AIM program, he was now going to share with them some of the things that he does for the AIM and GATE students, because they seem to be pretty smart and were paying attention. That was several children came home to tell their parents about the comment that was made in their classroom. And I know of an adult who was in the classroom who was really shocked to hear that comment. So I approve what the superintendent has proposed, and I thank you for continuing to explore new opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. So flag, and then if Terry Nagel, Dinesh, no last name, Dominic Hodenshield, and Kathleen Doty could come on down.
Yes, thank you for I think the board's attention to this issue. I am a parent. My wife is Gina Bloom, been in touch with folks. You know, the AIM program has been shrinking the last few years, and you know, the district's excuse is that it is increasingly wants to focus on this top 2%. But, you know, and I'm speaking about kind of my own experience as a parent and my child, the problem I think with that is that this 2% is the least likely to have tolerance for standardized exam conditions. If my son is any indication, there are children who have kind of asynchronous development and kind of a sensory processing issues because of their the cognitive capacity to, you know, so my son was misidentified by the AIM program. So I am one of those parents whose son has been hurt in the AIM program because of the, by not being included in the AIM program. Fortunately, I worked with the IEP program just a few months ago. So he's now in his fourth grade. So he was misidentified at the end of the third grade. And he has been a mess in class. He hates school. But he's processing things at a 16-year-old's level, you know. And so in the classroom, like that's what education kind of is like for him. He's continuously challenging the teacher because it's more exciting, and he needs a sensory stimulation. He's chewing his way for 3 years. He's chewed his way through every pencil he's had. We've had immense dental work done for my child. You know, he's a kid who we thought had ADHD problems, so that's kind of why we went to the school counselor at first. And, you know, so the testing conditions for the AIM program did not identify him. And as a result, you know, he has been suffering. So I think the solution really is not, respectfully disagree with Dr. Bose, that, you know, we should focus more on programming and expanding AIM programming. I think, you know, focusing on identification is what has to happen. And, you know, this is going to benefit the underrepresented groups. I think you're missing a lot of students out there, and from a lot of diverse backgrounds and socioeconomic groups who have these kinds of, you know, acute cognitive capacities and sensory processing stuff, and are you know, would be identified in testing conditions that were more suited, you know, to finding those kids And presently, the kind of larger standardized models, as you know, is not doing the job. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry?
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I would like to comment that the testing data from the last 2 years is probably very different because there were large changes made in the testing. I've had 3 children go through that. I'm very pleased to hear a new plan to actually make something better from the superintendent. I've heard about differentiation in the classroom is the be-all and end-all, but I haven't seen it yet. I have to say, as a parent of 2, and I wish it was 3, gate-accepted or AIM-accepted children, it's very hard to trust the school board when you've been the whipping boy for a long time. My first 2 children, all 3 children, were bored witless at school. The first 2 happened to get through with the old testing and have flourished, have been blossomed. My 3rd child, I can't really explain to her what she did wrong or why she was the victim of this, whatever the change was, because there's been no real good reason why. As I say, I'm very pleased to actually hear a plan to make it better. It's really hard for me to trust that's going to happen. And also from my personal point of view, what happens to the children or the years who are in the AIM program or should have been in it while you come up with something better. I'd love to see you come up with differentiation in the classroom that truly works, but it's really, really hard. You know, you can find the history and the emotion here. It's really, really hard to trust that that's what's going to happen. I also object to being assumed or judged to be elitist or racist or whatever. I came to this country on an accompanying spouse visa. They would not even give me a social security number. Now you try and get anything done in this country with a social security number. None of my qualifications were recognised. And I don't like being assumed that I'm a white, privileged, I am an old guy, but a white privileged person, and that I'm biased or I'm racist or I don't want my children mixing. I would love to see the AIM identification process expand out and bring in more of those children. But also, what are you going to do? I'd love you to come up with something better, but what's going to happen to the children caught in the middle, the collateral damage? Because my child, well, one of my child, is one of those. Thanks.
Okay, Dinesh?
So I want to thank Dr. Bose for presentation. Unfortunately, 3 minutes is not enough to respond to your comments. We could do so if you replied to our emails. Davis, just before coming here, I looked at the demographic. Davis has 70% white, 15% Asians. 70% of Davis population has bachelor's or higher degree, actually. So it's not surprising we have a high percentage of representation from those groups. But I think the district has failed to identify the small population of minority, actually. So it's not our fault that the district is not able to identify the kids from that remaining 15% who are minority, actually. So I'm here to ask the board to keep the 2 strands that you promised last year. If a combo is an option, make the combo for all kids in the AIM, not just for Pioneer. Don't make them suffer, actually. Just like the district is supporting many other special programs, AIM should be one of the program, actually. Just don't tell us that get rid of it without having any other plans, actually. And tell us the plans. What is the plan? We are asking from last 4 years. You went from 95% to 96% to 97 to 98. But your only aim is to drive the program through the percentage, not by implementing the modifications, actually. 98% should not be a driving force. Your driving force should be how many AIM classes do you want to have? Or, I don't like the word gifted. How many alternative educational program you want to have? You want to have 10? Sure. You want to have 15? Sure. But do you have the resources, actually? So don't tell us that we can't do it. And we are available to provide insights. I'm a professor in UC Davis, if you need, actually. And there are many people who are available, I think. So I think many non-AIM kids are my daughter's best friends, actually. And every day she plays with them in the schoolyard, actually. Not that she's only playing with AIM kids, actually. So that's a misnomer, actually. So if your goal is to get rid of the AIM, like Dr. Bose presented today, please do so. Don't put us through disarray every year at this time of the year, actually. Solve the problem, don't just say get rid of it, actually. We are busy parents, and I'm sure you are all busy also, actually. We need a solution, not just an answer, get rid of it, actually. Thank you.
Dominic?
All right. So my name is Dominic Houtenschild. I am the father of a AIM identified fourth grader who's at Pioneer, who the program has served really, really well. And I'm very glad that she's in the program. So I absolutely support sustained commitment from the school district to the AIM Gate two-strand program that we have right now. I think Dinesh brought up my point that this is a university town. The people that live here because of the university, because they teach, because they value education, and because they want to see their kids in an excellent school district that will value high achievements to the same extent that we all have. I'm a professor at the university also, at the School of Medicine. Closing the achievement gap by focusing on lifting up the people who are not achieving as much is one half of the problem, but the other half is also allowing the people that can achieve and are expected to achieve to do their best. I think what's been very difficult over the last couple of years is the inconsistent communications from the school board about what's going to happen with the aims, the changing expectations. So the expectations are set and then not met because they're changed at the last minute. The uncertainty is very difficult to deal with. So I think communications need to be much more clear going forward. So I think those are the main points that I would like to bring up. But again, to reemphasize that for my daughter, the AIM program has been fantastic. I have absolute faith in the qualifications of the teachers at Pioneer and of Mr. Duffy as a principal. I'm convinced that they will do the best that they possibly can. But I encourage the school board to make it easy for them by setting clear and clearly communicated expectations, and hopefully by continuing the two strands of the AIM Gate program. Thanks.
Okay, Kathleen, and then Alan Hirsch, Yamima Wolk, Sean Yao, and Jill Van Zanten. Could you come on down?
Hi, my name is Kathleen Doty. I'm a retired teacher from Willett Elementary School, where I taught for 17 years. In light of Superintendent Bowe's commitment to review the AIM program through the lenses of equity and excellence for all students, I felt I had a heavy responsibility to speak to you this evening. I have the highest regard for the administrators, teachers, parents, and students in our AIM program. It is this sense of collegiality and loyalty to our school community that has kept me and other regular ed classroom teachers from risking engagement in this conversation. It should not be ignored that it is professionally expensive to shed light on the negative effects of the AIM program. Many of the most informed voices are not heard here tonight. With that said, I encourage the individuals in the position to make programmatic decisions, to courageously champion the recommendations that Superintendent Bowes put forth tonight. Please keep in mind the difficult issues of entitlement, status, segregation, and marginalization. I hope for a day when only those few students who are unable to access the curriculum in a neighborhood classroom are identified for self-contained AIM instruction. My concern comes from a deep desire for all of our students to enjoy a vibrant neighborhood school and a childhood unfettered by labels. As a community that is actively engaged in social justice and working toward a better world where we treat our neighbors as we would like to be treated, the real challenge in regards to district policy seems to be advocating for our neighbors' children as we would advocate for our own. Thank you.
Alan?
Good evening. Thank you for listening so deeply. This is a very difficult issue for you all. I'm a Davis parent. My daughter was identified in the AIM program at North Davis Elementary. She also attended Chavez, which is the wonderful bilingual program, and she's now a Da Vinci student in the 9th grade. I can believe there is a need for self-contained gate in some situations, but I think framed as kind of a special education program for those children who don't seem to be able to prosper in those things. But let me return to that thought. First place, my daughter was in GATE, and in the AIM GATE program, and I think she was badly placed, actually. She could do the work academically, but I think, as she expressed it, there was a social isolation that she experienced at North Davis between the AIM GATE students and the other students, and I don't think that served her well. And her experience subsequently at Da Vinci and project management with kids of all varying skill levels in different areas has been very good for her. So I'm not sure whether her experience in the AIM program actually served her in the best way of developing her first skills. But returning to my comment about the possible need for a self-contained GATE program, AIM program, there are probably some kids who cannot mesh into a standard environment. But I wonder how many of those really are. They're kind of a special ed program, I would call it that way. And if it's viewed as a special ed program and not as a trend, then we can basically look at it differently. And then the racial diversity is not so important anymore. I mean, we don't look at racial diversity in other special ed programs. It's less of an issue. So maybe that's another way of kind of taking that issue off the table. Also, in terms of special ed, who would really qualify? Would a Beethoven qualify into our current aid thing? He's really good in some things, but not others. Would Einstein have qualified? He would fail because he was dyslexic, even though it was clearly mathematical. Or my father, who flunked freshman math 5 times at University of Illinois, but graduated top of his school. He would not have qualified, but clearly he was a pretty outstanding architectural student. I think the programs are a little messed up. We need to have a program that identifies people with diversity on an ongoing basis, not just one time in 3rd grade. That's structurally built into the segregated program, and we can't get that away. So I think what John Bowles is suggesting is exactly what we need. We need to differentiate ongoingly in multiple different diversities and different skill levels to really optimally serve all our students. And maybe there is room for one special ed class for the kids who don't seem to work on the other things. But again, that's really a narrow sort of segment. So thank you for listening, and please, we're stronger together. Putting the kids together so they learn socially together, I think, will benefit our whole entire community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yamima?
Thank you. Having grown up here, I know the programs that you're referring to in your presentation. In fact, my husband did madrigals. But all programs, including AIM, are important because each child needs to be given the challenge to reach their potential. It's important to us and many parents here, as you can see. So you're saying our needs are not important. If our needs were being met, we wouldn't be here today, standing before you. The board majority owns this problem with identification. In fact, I've heard more than one story, but one in particular hit very close to home. A friend of mine whom I grew up with, who went to high school, has a son who's twice exceptional. He was not identified by the normal OLSAT, but likely could have benefited very much so from the program. But time and time again, he was not identified and fell through the cracks. So they did what any caring parent would do, and they moved him out of this district, along with their other child. So you talk about the budget and how we are low, we need more students. This is going to happen time and time again with this problem. Mend it. It was very predictable. Mend it, not end it. You could have started to fix this problem last year when you had these same results. If money is a limitation for providing standalone classrooms, as you said, and every dollar counts during a budget deficit, then why are you, the superintendent, and 2 key administrators taking a 3% raise, but a teacher is going to lose their job? It's not okay. I will sit on a committee as well. Have you asked any of us parents for any feedback on why we're so passionate about this? Not once. Have you asked any of the AIM teachers? Not that I'm aware of. Thank you.
Okay, Sean?
Hello, everybody. I realize that as much as I am talking to you, as the board, I'm also talking to my fellow parents in the audience. I have 3 children. The oldest is in the 3rd grade at Pioneer, and I started following the board meetings and all the AIM-related issues last year because, you know, he's up to the test. We received a letter in the mail. Then as I learned the history of GATE or AIM in this town, I realized there's actually a lot of baggage in the entire many years leading to today. And I understand that there's a lot of sentiment in the audience as well. I was not aware of this before. And yesterday, I read a letter in the Davis Enterprise written by Ms. Karen Hamilton, who just spoke. And it said, the small but vocal group opposed to recent reforms will be sure to turn out and press for restoration of the bloated, 4-strand, segregated elementary program. Unless you want to return to the era of private and preferential gifted testing with Davis 3rd graders sorted into categories for inclusion and exclusion, attend this meeting. I was a little bit confused and frustrated because how I felt was because of my son took first the OSAT and then a COGAT, and he got a letter telling him that he qualified for this program, suddenly I find myself belonging to this group, small group that is labeled as elitist, or we are at the opposite side of a class warfare in this town, and suddenly I'm caught in the middle of this battle. And just because my son took a test. And this is crazy. This is makes absolutely no sense, right? This is number 1. Number 2, okay. Okay, you're going to get rid of the AIM. You're going to get rid of the self-contained classes. That's fine. So what's next? Neighborhood school. What does that mean? Does that mean there's absolutely no distinction in education, in instruction, or there's something concrete? Okay. Number 3, with the 98 percentile testing, there was supposed to be the Hope Scale pilot, which was intended to identify students not using the standardized tests. Now, that Hope Scale identified 0 students, okay, which means you don't have a tool to identify people. Now, how are you going to differentiate if you cannot identify anybody? And you cannot do that here as a group. How are you going to be able to do that by individual teachers in the classroom? Where's the logic in that? I mean, I don't understand. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So Jill, and then let me call the next 4 cards. Jinyi Key, Jan Marie Garcia, Joseph Bielo, and Alicia Silva.
So my name is Jill Van Zanten. I had 2 children, very fortunate to go through school here in the district. They were GATE identified, but went to the neighborhood program, and then one finished up at Davis High School and the other at Da Vinci. I'd just like to observe that our meeting tonight is really an example of all of us here doing our job. So we have parents here tonight, and your job is to show up and ask questions, share your insights, share information that our decision makers might not have. And of course, first and foremost, you are your children's champions and advocates, and no one else is going to do that for you. And so that is perfectly normal and okay that you are here advocating for your children's needs. Now, our leaders here are here to actually craft the educational policy on behalf of all of our district's children. And that will include children and families who are not represented at tonight's meeting. You're here to articulate the big picture. And that big picture, as Dr. Bowles articulated, is an inclusive educational environment that's rich with opportunity for all children. I would posit that that big picture does not come from simply aggregating the requests and demands of the most vociferous and the most well-connected parents among us. Now, as Davis parents, most of us are pretty good at organizing. We're good at lobbying. We're good at t-shirts. We're good at getting what we want. But in this case, we cannot be about interest group politics, but about true leadership, and that leadership has to raise our vision beyond our own constituencies. I think our district has made great strides in the last 2 years in moving toward a more equitable, inclusive, and pedagogically grounded way of organizing our classrooms, bringing our children together rather than unnecessarily ranking and segregating them. Please stay the course and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Ginny?
Thank you, President Archer and trustees and the Superintendent Board. So thank you very much for your time and efforts running the school. So it's well run, so my kids has benefited a lot. So here I talk about AIM program. So before I actually talk about my comments, I just want I have an observation during the Superintendent Board's presentation. So you mentioned, so the AIM program has wasted a lot of staff time, so, and we also spent a lot of time today talk about. And it caused me to ask, is that because the AIM program was not well run as compared to other programs? That's why a lot of people actually show up here. If it's well run, then we wouldn't spend that much time here. Okay, so, and then I agree with you, so there's two things in the AIM. One is identification, the other one is implementation. So I agree with you, so identification we need to work on, so to be more inclusive, but I really want to focus on the implementation part, because the reason we are all here and you are here is because we all committed to provide best education to all the students, to be inclusive, that's the word, right? And however, I think the recent decision by the district to create a combo class just for the AIM students at the Pioneer is not going along that direction. And we had a parent meeting early this week with Ms. Duffy and AIM teacher at the Pioneer, and both teachers recognize and acknowledge the challenge of teaching a combo class. And as an educator, and as I believe you all know, so teaching a multi-grade combo class is much difficult than teaching a single grade. Some people say, oh, that's actually better. If so, why not we change all the class to combo? Why we keep single grade? The same is true. Why the UC Davis still have 4 years program? It's not lumped into a single group of education. So therefore, I think we should ask ourselves, when we create this combo class, are we really provide the best education to our kids? To provide the best education to every kid, not just because they got passed this test, so 10% of the Davis students, then we don't care them anymore. We just lump them into this combo class. And therefore, I trust everyone here. We are committed to provide the best education. Therefore, I think before we make such decision, which has a big impact on our kids, 5 years or maybe their lifetime, we should actually consider other alternatives which don't actually have a negative budget impact. Just find a way to include the AIM expand the AIM program so that we can sustain the self-contained class. And so, thank you.
Thank you. Jan? Oh, Jan maybe went for a visit somewhere. So Joseph?
So I'm going to apologize because I got 4 different streams of consciousness here. So first, I like that picture of the flowers over there because it shows you that, oh, the lilacs and the tulips and different sides of the path and the grass is over there, and you wonder why. Because the soil needs to be different for the grass, and some need water sprinkled on them, and some need drip lines. And they live in different classrooms. And I thought, we can take these metaphors anywhere we want, right? So you see it one way, and I see it another way. I've been an educator at a university for 15 years now, and before that I had the opportunity to be an educator for blind kids. I taught blind kids math when I was in college. It was a real eye-opening, pardon the, it was really, I learned Braille, right? And we had different classes for these kids for a reason. There are many, I think I agree with your goal, Superintendent Bowles. I mean, we got to figure out what is the point of AIM, right? And this board has to, okay? So I'm not going to be pushing for this. We have to figure out what the point is. But and you see there's a lot of people with really valid points, okay? The father over there, whose name I forgot, he left, I watched him leave, whose kid was chewing on a pencil. There's a point there. There's a special education need there. The story of my daughter, so my kid's a rule follower, okay? So she'll sit in that class and get everything done and keep her mouth shut as long as she has to, because that's what she does. And she comes home. And I know, just as the teacher over here said, we have different information. I have different information too. I have the information of my child at home. I'm bored. I'm bored. Let me tell you what happens to a bored kid in class. I'll tell you what happens to him. That was me. I could mail it in. I mailed it in. I mailed it in until the end of my undergraduate career, I mailed it in. Okay, until graduate school hit me hard about how much work I had to do and what was required of me. These kids will mail it in because they can. And what we're teaching them is not the material. It's the framework for learning. And if you teach them their framework for learning is they can just mail it in. They're not going to be happy. They're going to find something else to do. And they're not going to have a good framework for success later in life. And I'm telling you that, okay, because I believe it happened to me. Now, I'm going to make a tough point, and I'm going to, in these last 30 seconds, and the tough point is lying with statistics. And I apologize that I have to use that word, but you're lying with statistics here when we look at the demographic information. The one thing I read, and Dinesh said it too, the one thing I read from the demographic information is there are 2% African American population in this town. So when you have 50 kids identified in AIM, that's about 1. With statistical fluctuations on any given year, that'll be less than 1. So when we're talking about that population, not being identified, we're confusing the situation. The problem with AIM came when more Asian Americans were identified than white folks. And that's when this town stopped supporting AIM. I want you to think about that, because that's the racial difference here.
Okay. Alicia, and then Jan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think I'm just going to speak my mind rather than what I had written down. First, I'd like to address Dr. Bowes. We didn't have a chance to speak, but I would like to echo another mom's experience. My child was in neighborhood school. He would cry every single day, not wanting to go to school. And in fact, when that score came in the mail, it was liberating. And in fact, the principal counseled me and said, "Did you ever think about moving your child?" And it was like, wow, maybe I should. And my child is now happy. He has friends, and he is thriving. So, and the reason I would echo the other speaker, this has consumed so much time, is because people care. People care about this program and how it has helped their children. And also, I would speak to Ms. Anderson to say that because I have the time and ability to be here and speak, that I don't count, and that the people who don't count, that didn't come, count more than me. I'm sorry, but I just don't think that's appropriate. And so when my child, who is twice exceptional, was found, because he was identified, because the program had a different commitment, a different makeup, leadership. He is twice exceptional, and I felt grateful. I felt grateful as an immigrant who is not born here, that I could come to this country and that my child could be identified and could flourish. And then it pains me to see how it has changed over time. The coordinator lost her position, testing radically changed, the makeup of the program radically changed, and I agree the private testing was not fair, and I'm glad that's gone. But I don't feel that the current changes are helping our students in any way. I don't think the program is better. And I do think the problem is identification. I think we're failing to identify who needs to be tested and how they need to be tested. As you know, giftedness, and I don't like that term either, but that's the term, transcends socioeconomic, racial lines, and we're not finding these kids, and we need to have a commitment to find these kids. And I think that's where the problem lies. And to quote Susan Levenberg, who's no longer here, but we cannot, who was quoting Salman Khan, we cannot leave things as they are. The cost of inaction is unconscionably high and is counted out not in dollars or euros or rupees, but in human destinies. And for my child, I do feel that that changed his destiny. And I think that we really need to have a commitment to the program and its diversity and to these children. And the achievement gap transcends also all levels. It's not just for those who can't read, it's also in the high academic level. So, thank you.
Okay, Jan, and then let me call four names to follow: Elaine Talley, Joyce Langrick, David Miller, and Himo Govinji Merchant.
Great. My name's Jan Marie Garcia. I'm a parent in the district, and I've been doing this for a long time. When I started this in 2002, and people had been doing it for many years, there were 30% of Davis kids were gate identified, and there are virtually no African Americans and Latinos in the program. When I got up here last spring, I said race was a red herring, and I was lambasted as if I don't think that race is important, which is kind of funny. What I was saying is I don't want diversity to be an excuse to keep a bloated program bloated. Please don't use my struggle like that. It's an irony that uses a privileged method to identify and segregate privilege. I think we'll do okay together, as long as we are really concentrating on that differentiation. And I appreciate every story of every parent here tonight. The one that broke my heart especially was the one who was not gate identified. And that just breaks your heart. I don't believe that giftedness is something that can be measured on a standardized test. You can do that, but I think that's a flawed concept. I know you all have your voting constituencies, but I am hoping that you make policy based on sound pedagogy for our entire community. Thank you.
Elaine.
Hi, I'm Elaine Talley, and wasn't sure where to start. So I'll start with that. My grandparents met each other when my grandfather was getting his PhD in chemistry at Harvard, and my grandmother was getting her undergrad degree in chemistry at Harvard. They produced my dad, the nuclear physicist, and who met my mom when he was coaching the Cal ski team and she was on the Stanford ski team. And oddly enough, I, with my 2 graduate degrees, have 3 children who the district identified as AIM qualified. So that fits very well with Dr. Bose's report, that the kids who come from educational privilege are likely to be identified. I was a parent at North Davis Elementary when my first son was identified, and I did the parent of an 8-year-old scramble. What do I do? Where do I place him? What do I do? And like most parents at that point at North Davis, I kept my gate-identified son at North Davis, and he thrived there. And he went into the higher math class at junior high without any trouble, and he has achieved quite well. He went on to Da Vinci and did very well there in UCLA and is thriving now. When my second son was a 6th grader, there were 17 gate-identified children in his class. I think there were 60 or almost 60 6th graders at North Davis at the time. The next year, GATE came to North Davis, and the climate completely changed, where kids were sorted, I'm GATE and you're not. And so when my third son came along, because our family had not believed in the segregated classroom and had not found that our child's needs had not been met in the regular classroom, we did not place him in the GATE classroom. But by 6th grade, he wanted to be where his friends were, so we let him go into the GATE classroom. What no one who hasn't had that kind of experience necessarily knows is my older sons actually had a more challenging curriculum at North Davis in the neighborhood program than my youngest son had in the GATE program. So I think it's really important that we start maybe looking at what the GATE program provides. The other thing I would encourage all of you to do is read the essays that Da Vinci graduates write as they leave, because those essays are all about inclusion and how we can learn from everyone in our class, not just the people that are most like us, not just the people who are smart like us, but everyone has something to add to our classroom. And those essays are really powerful, and I would encourage you to do that. I'm so happy that we have Dr. Bose talking about what really matters. We've talked about the GATE class without ever talking about what happens in the GATE class, because my experience is it is not more challenging than the neighborhood class. We have many excellent teachers in this district in neighborhood programs. Thank you.
Okay, Joyce.
Hello. I want to let you know I am not a named parent. In fact, my kid didn't get in, but his 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teacher asked me why I didn't have him in AIM. I didn't know about private testing, believe it or not, even though I think I stay on top of everything. But I believe in solutions, so here's a solution. Our teachers work very hard. How do I do this? When my child was a 2nd grader, I spent every Friday for 2 hours helping out the teacher. So I got to spend time seeing what they do. How do they go to the bathroom when you've got 30 kids and no teacher's aide and no parent volunteer in the classroom? I was floored. She asked me, is it okay if I leave you with the kids? I just need to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, sure, of course. I'll watch the kids. They're all doing their work. You know, they're behaving. But that got me thinking, what's going on? How do they do it when there's no other adult to leave these young children there? So here's the solution. You separate the kids starting in junior high on skill level math. My son's an 8th grader doing 9th grade math at Da Vinci. Da Vinci is amazing. I cannot even praise Da Vinci. I saw what the high school kids did. I told him, I am scared when you get to Da Vinci High, how are you going to do this amazing level of work? Go to their, I encourage people to actually learn about that school. So, you have 1 grade level, 3 teachers. Whatever the subject, math, English, or science, differentiate per skill level. The student can transfer between the 3 skill levels or 4 skill levels if there's 4 teachers in the 5th grade classroom as the subject changes. Let's take multiplication. You do, multiplication without carryover, not carryover. Once a kid masters it, go to the other class. If a kid is still struggling, move them into the class that's spending more time on it. So you are basically customizing for the kids, and 2, you're helping these teachers I believe each grade level should have a TA so that teacher can focus to do their work or go to the bathroom. Okay, AIM parents, I recommend that one of those groups is at a AIM level, whatever pace. You guys decide that. AIM parents, would you be okay with that? So as on the board and as a superintendent, spend time every week or every day, not once a quarter, not once a month. Find out why the students that struggle, why do they struggle? You can't do that when you have a site visit and everybody's wearing their pretty dresses, perfect ties and makeup to impress you guys because they're scared of losing their jobs. They've got bills to pay. So spend time with them. Because I didn't even know what was happening with the teachers until I spent time away from work to spend time with my teachers.
Hello again. Here we are. My name is Dave Miller. I worked on the professional development portion of the strategic plans the first time around and the last time that you're going to be looking at the end of the month. I hope you appreciate our work. I've been a parent and community member for 40 years in this town, and I want to say that AIM and GATE have been contentious since the very started, so this is nothing new. I want to commend you all for your efforts in trying to understand this and make it better. I really appreciate what you said tonight. That goes along with all I've seen in 40 years. When you look at AIM and the other choice programs that we have, I think the town and the district has gone overboard, bent over backwards, I should say, to let parents have their say and address each child. Parents have one point of view. You guys have to look at the big picture and what we can do in our relatively small district. When you look at the structure of the school districts, there's a structural problem with how the programs are put together at the elementary schools. And those are where I believe as the gap is made worse every year that it's not addressed. Starting at the elementary schools will give you the most bang for your buck, I should say. There's two schools that have most of the outsized number of the kids in the gap population, and those are the ones most affected by the choice programs. If there was some way that you could change the way the programs are set up so that principals and staff could balance the challenges across the whole campus, I think you'd have a much better effect with parents, with the gap kids, and the morale of your neighborhood teachers. So if you could look at the whole program that way, I think you'll find some areas for success. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Hima Govinji Merchant, and I am a parent of 2 students enrolled in the AIM program. I want to begin by thanking Ms. Allen and Ms. Renagera for their time in scheduling a meeting for Pioneer parents with Principal Duffy and his AIM team on March 4th. It was very appreciated by the Pioneer parents, and unfortunately, many of the questions that we had and concerns that we had are still unanswered. My concerns in particular are regarding the process of testing, percentile cutoff, and placement for next year's academic school year, and the continuity for years to come. The district made dramatic changes to AIM testing last year. However, this process is not perfect yet. Last year, the board acknowledged that any changes should be thoughtful and consideration should be made to allow time to evaluate long-term impact. Yet, once the data from this year's testing was received, no conversations, I believe, or reviews were made by the board. It was noted in a Davis newspaper that Trustee Sunder suggested a review of AIM statistics for the upcoming school year, and she was voted down. Why not review this information in a timely manner to make informed decisions? It seems that moving forward without reviewing the impact of next year's AIM placement is not in line with our district's promise or mission statement to serve all of our children to the best of our abilities, including those with special needs. Families with AIM-identified students were mailed letters with urgent time-sensitive deadline weeks ago. We were asked for a reply by tomorrow, yet this AIM presentation to the board is tonight. This appears to be a backward timeline. How is the board going to approach sustainability of the AIM program and the goal of a clearer, more transparent process when AIM families are left with no or few answers, a messy delivery of letters, elimination of a single grade, fourth grade strand without discussion of the future or staff considerations? As a stakeholder in AIM, along with many in the parent community, I feel insecure about the lack of transparency and commitment by the district to maintain the AIM program as a self-contained and single grade program. This proposal for eliminating a fourth grade single strand at Pioneer dismantles the most experienced AIM teacher team currently teaching in the AIM program in Davis. Mrs. West has been teaching AIM for over 20 years. Ms. Pesmark has been teaching AIM for 15 years. And Mr. Doherty has been teaching AIM for over 10 years. They are outstanding teachers. There are many possibilities and solutions for maintaining the current two-strand program, which will support sustainability for our growing school district. Respectfully, I request that you please consider the following. Number one, proposal made by the OSLICs, which was suggested, they emailed this to the board. They suggested an alternative placement model as a two-step process. It details how once all qualified students are placed, a lottery would take place for any remaining spots, drawing from students not AIM identified but in the 96 to 97 percentile. Number two, evaluate the placement process by neighborhoods. For example, students that are AIM identified that live in West and North Davis would be placed in Willett, and the AIM-identified students that live in East and South Davis would be placed at Pioneer. A map could be drawn based on current neighborhood placements. What would that look like for the current AIM-identified students for fourth grade? I'm out of time, but I would love to also talk to Dr. Bose further because I wasn't on a panel. I don't know what panel that was. I would love to give you more feedback about my satisfaction in the AIM program for my children. Thank you.
All right. Hi, good evening. Thanks, everybody. I have a third grader at Willett going into the AIM program next year. I've been able to, going near the end here, so I've been able to listen to a lot of other people talk. I want to say, one, I don't think that AIM is an award program that some of these kids get to have. It's not a special experience, and it's not an interest group. Okay? It's an identification of a need for some alternative education. Different techniques, different methods. That's what this is. As a parent, I can clearly see that my own kid is bored. He's not engaged with the pace, the depth, or the breadth of what is being taught, and I know he needs something different. And I think that's my job to know that about my own kid. I hear everybody talking against AIM as a separate classroom, that concept, the segregation of the classrooms. I don't really care if my son is in a separate classroom. I don't care if he's in a combo class. I don't care if he's in a regular class. I care that he gets the education that he needs. And for the record, I don't think my kid cares either, by the way, about that. Unfortunately, the reality today is that differentiation that we all, I think a lot of us really agree with, isn't happening. So I think it would be great if it was. I think it would be great if the identification was not a test that randomly occurred in third grade. I see no reason for that. It should be happening at all ages, all throughout the process. So what I would like to ask of you, the board, is that you do not take any further action to reduce the existing program as it is with AIM until, if necessary, you've put in place these alternative identifications and alternative differentiation processes. So don't cut it today with the hope of something coming down the road. Let's wait till we have that and then evaluate if we need to make any future changes. And then lastly, please don't vilify AIM kids for needing special attention. Please don't vilify AIM parents of AIM kids for wanting their kids to be engaged and being excited about education. And please never, ever criticize parents for wanting to be engaged in the process. So thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Mike did pretty much everything I was going to say, but just real quick, I just wanted to say that, I'm a parent of 3 kids in the district, and I almost feel evil being here because my son identified AIM, and that just is that's got to be wrong. I mean, there's no way that that should be the way I feel or the way that we should be encouraging this discussion. Share a little story. I coach Little League here in town. My best hitter recently was barely able to hit all of a sudden, and I started thinking back on the last couple of practices, and I hadn't been working with him because he was doing fine. And what I realized is it's human nature, right, to just work with the people who seem like they're struggling. And I can tell you, talking to my son tonight before I was coming here, I asked him, and that's exactly what happens to him now. The teacher spends time, and he's even told, oh, you go over here and just do a couple extra problems. It's not a special thing. What I would ask of the board is to just make sure that whatever program is designed, it shows a commitment to these students and not just a chance to ignore them, which is, I mean, people use AIM, gifted, whatever label you want to use, but my concern is that I worry my son is essentially labeled as somebody who's easy to ignore. And, like everybody in the district, I love my son, and we have plenty of friends in town who are non-AIM, and I almost feel like even coming here to speak about him, I feel like somehow something's going to come back on me. And so I think this is something that really needs to be fixed. And the fact that, I haven't been on the school board or working here is surprising to me, to be frankly honest, that this hasn't been fixed in the past. I think it's great that fresh look is being taken at it. But we just ask that everybody take a real hard look. And I think a 5-year plan is a minimum of what I assume any program is. And there are a lot of parents here who would be happy to be involved with that if you need help. Thank you.
Hello, Ingrid Salim, science teacher, North Davis and Holmes. Been teaching for 30 years, self-enclosed gate as well as regular mainstream, and AIM throughout all of those classes, teaching grades 4, 5, 6, and 8 right now. I was gate identified in 2nd grade, and there was not a program that my parents felt would meet that, so instead I was the kid who read, and everyone's sorry now because it just gave me more words. But in the meantime, I learned what it was to be bored. And as a child, you don't know what to do to fix that. And really the structure that school provides is the way for students to make sense of what they're learning. So I not only have a lot of sympathy and empathy for this question of boredom, but the fear, I had that from my student, my own child, but I also have it from my students. I think it's a real one, and I think it's one that we can't ignore. Students should not be in a class where they're bored, ever. And I think we have to be real and honest about where does that happen, how do we mitigate for that, how do we provide teachers not just resources but professional development that gives them approaches to inquiry and to learning and to thinking that go beyond what may be traditional learning. Project-based learning is one of those, and it's amazing. But there are a lot of teachers who don't know these particular strategies or aren't using them or haven't had the time to develop them. And I think that that's where some of the frustration comes from students and parents who are afraid that their child would go into a mainstream classroom and be that child who's shuttled off to the back with a book. And I don't want to see that happen either. I can say from the other side of that, that as a teacher who has striven? What is that? I don't know. Help. What is it? I don't know. Driven. I don't know. Grammar lesson at Board of Education. It's a gate question, everybody. And I think it's changing because it's a weak verb, right? Or is it a strong verb? There's a number of us who, because our standards are changing, and they are moving, both in English language arts and in math and in science, towards inquiry-based kinds of cognitive questions. Those, by their very nature, are open-ended. And open-ended questions structured well with dialogue, with writing prompts, do bring students out of their own thinking and into others' thinking, and they allow them to explore and go deep. And those are ways that can happen. Those aren't skill-based lessons. In skill-based lessons, there are students who work more accelerated than others, and they're going to finish first. And we shouldn't be doing so many skill-based lessons. That should not be the foundation of our education system. There should be much more open-ended inquiry. There should be project-based learning. So as a teacher myself, I strive to do that all the time. But I still can see in some of my mainstream classrooms there are sometimes students who are done. And they're pretty happy to read a book every once in a while. But I have to work at making sure that that's not the norm and that they are in fact given challenging things to do. So I would recommend that we look at numerous strategies. Let's make some maker spaces. Let's look at ways to give teachers stipends or parents who are willing to come and be coaches for various clubs. Let's expand our engineering ideas, our math and science things, competitions. There's a number of those kinds of competitions that happen now that we're not really supporting. And find other ways. And in the meantime, let's make sure that those students who we are saying have advantages by whatever merit are in fact able to have their needs met. I believe in that. Thanks.
Come, let us reason together. I don't know who said that, but it's a great quote. I have another one. I think Lyndon Johnson said it, but I can never find it. It's when you have a majority, you don't need a debate. And there was a board majority here that didn't want to have an honest debate. And the people kept coming back and coming back and coming back, and they're here again tonight. 2 years ago, when Alan Fernandez was president of the board, he wanted to defer this to a subcommittee, and he was voted down. And there's a new board. I would hope that this new board would defer this back to the GATE committee with some administrators, maybe the superintendent, and hash this stuff out. Instead of the board, because they had a majority, taking it upon themselves and doing everything they could to shrink the program. Now, there are things that people agreed on out of the gate. Oh, sorry. Like getting rid of the private testing. Could have done that, no sweat. Last year, 2 sections or 3 sections. Could have beat the bushes and come up with some kids that scored at the margin, and you could have put them in the program and had a 3rd section. But no, we're going to make this program smaller and smaller and smaller, and the people keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Okay? The selection process doesn't work. The hard testing score doesn't work. You need multiple measures. You have to figure out who these kids are that need the program. And, 98%, 96%. When you had private testing, you were down in the 80% range on the OLSAT, and those kids were getting retested and getting in. So these kids, it's not a question of are they going to be successful in the program. We know that kids down in the 80-something percentile can be successful in the program, which should be the ultimate goal, is to have programs that kids can be successful in. So the real question is identification. Honestly, from my perspective, I would give the test, but I wouldn't have any kind of a testing cutoff, and I would let the parents and the kids and the teachers and the counselors meet and decide what is the best placement for the kid. A kid that scores at the 90th percentile that wants into the program might do very well in the program. A kid who scores in the 96th percentile might not do well and has to get out of the program, which is about why we need to reevaluate these kids on a regular basis. So I would hope that what you would do is reinstate the GATE Advisory Committee and get this off of your agenda and let the people that are involved with the program hash this stuff out and then bring it back to the board instead of constantly fighting this out with your precious board time. Thank you.